Good evening, class. Tonight we are working on Module 6, Lesson 7, and our objective tonight is to model mixed numbers with units of hundreds, tens, ones, tenths, and hundredths in expanded form and on a place value chart. Here we have a series of number discs, and we are going to put these together in a place value chart so that we can write the number that these number discs represent. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw my place value chart. And I can see that I have hundreds, so I'm going to fill in my place value chart for my hundreds, my tens, and my ones. Just to the right of my ones, that's my decimal point. So I'm going to put my decimal point right there. And then next to the ones is my tenths. So I have my tenths. And then next to my tenths, I have my hundredths. So if we take a look at these discs, I can count them up. I can see that I have 3 hundreds, so I'm going to write a 3 in my hundreds spot on the place value chart. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tens. I have 3, 6, 7, 8 ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tenths. And I have 3 hundredths in my last set of discs here. Now it's important that I remember to add my decimal point here for this number. So the way this number is written with 3 hundreds, 7 tens, so 3 hundreds, 7 tens, 8 ones, 7 tenths, and 3 hundredths. We read that, we start with this unit all together, 378. The decimal point, we use the word and, so it's 378 and then we read this all together as one number as well, 73 hundredths. We finish, when we read the number, we finish off with the smallest place value. In this case, it is hundredths. So we would read this as 78 hundredths. If we are looking at this in unit form, we could write this as 3 hundreds, three hundreds, 7 tens, or 3 hundreds plus 7 tens, plus 8 ones, plus 7 tenths, plus 3 hundredths. Writing this in expanded form, it would be 300 plus 70 plus 8 plus 7 tenths plus 3 hundredths. And if we put that all back together, if we add those all up, we would get our answer, or our final number of 378 and 73 hundredths. So let's take another smaller number. We would read this as 15 and 43 hundredths. If I wanted to write this in expanded form in fraction notation, I would separate each place value in this number. So in my tens place, I just have 1 10. I have 5 ones. And if I'm doing it in fraction notation, I would say I have 4 tenths and 3 hundredths. So that's how I would write this number, 15 and 43 hundredths, in fraction notation. Decimal notation, expanded form, is very similar. My tens and ones don't change. I still have 1 10, 5 ones. But instead of writing these as fractions, we're going to write them as decimals. So there's my 4 tenths. And there's my 3 hundredths. And if we add those all back up together, we would get 15 and 43 hundredths. One thing to keep in mind when you are putting these numbers in expanded form is that we don't always have a value in every place value in our number. So you can see this number does not have any value in the tenths column. I have 3 tens, 8 ones, 0 tenths, and 9 hundredths. So if I were to write this in expanded form in fraction notation, I would say 30, so that's my 3/10, plus my 8 ones, plus 0/10, plus 9/100. Now we know that since this doesn't have any value, we don't really have to include that in our expanded form. If we only had these three parts of our expanded form, it would still add up to this number. You would just have to remember to include that placeholder 0 in the tenths column. Because if we left that out in this number, that would really change the value of it. This would be 38 and 9/10, when in actuality, it's 38 and 9/100. That would have a different value. In decimal form, we would write this as 30 plus 8 plus 0/10 plus 9/100. And again, since this doesn't have any value, we don't have to write it in expanded form, but that 0 absolutely has to be there when it is in standard form. This goes for numbers that have zeros in the higher place values as well. So if I were to read this number, I'm going to read this part all together, 800 and 8/100. So to put this in expanded form, I would write my 800s. I have 0/10, plus 0/1, plus 0/10, plus 8/100. So again, in expanded form, if we left these out, the value wouldn't change. 800 plus 8/100 would still add up to our final answer of 800 and 8/100. Here we have a number, and I've already put it in the place value chart with you. We would read this whole unit together, 827 and 64/100. We wouldn't read it as 6/10 4/100. We would put this together as 64/100. So on the quiz, I'm going to be asking you to tell me what digits are in which place values on the chart and what their value is. So I will do the first one for you. So if the question says the digit blank is in the hundreds place, my correct answer would be the digit 8. I wouldn't write 800 there because they're only asking for the digit. So the digit 8 is in the hundreds place. The second part of the question, it has a value of, this is where you put it in this expanded form. It has a value of 800. So that's an example of how to answer the quiz questions. For the last part of this lesson, we are going to go backwards. I'm going to ask you to take numbers that are in expanded form and put them back into standard form. So here, if I give you 10 plus 4 plus 2/10 plus 3/100, we want to put that back together into standard form. I can use a place value chart to help me. I've got my hundreds, tens, ones. This is my tenths. And this is my hundredths. So I can put this here in the place value chart. I only have one. I don't have any hundreds. I have 1 10. I have 4 ones. I have 2 tenths. And I have 3 hundredths. So to put this number back in standard form, it would be 14 and 23 hundredths. Okay, for the practice problems, I want you to take the number 25 and 3/10 and write that in expanded decimal notation. And remember, go back and rewatch the video if you forget what that looks like. Please write the number 208 90 hundredths in expanded decimal notation. And for the last problem, I'm going to give you a number in expanded form. So here we have 3 hundredths, 2 tenths, 0 ones, 3 tenths, and 6 hundredths. Please write that number in standard form. And if you get stuck or confused or have any questions, please write down your questions, bring them back to class tomorrow where we will continue working on this. Thank you and have a great night.